Good afternoon, and welcome to the onboarding webinar for our newest adopters of the Columbus Commitment. I am Shannon Ginther, First Lady of Columbus and Chair of the Columbus Women's Commission. On behalf of all of our commissioners, thank you for joining our effort to end the race and gender-based wage gap right here in Central Ohio. As you all know, pay equity isn't just a women's issue. It's an economic challenge and a concern for families, too. In order for us to close this gap and build a better future, we need organizations of all sizes and sectors to participate. And that is why we are so excited to have you with us. No matter where you are in your pay equity journey, having the commitment in your toolkit will enable you to create a more equitable and inclusive workforce. Following this webinar, you'll receive an additional email with information and resources to help get you started. But first, I'm pleased to introduce 5 of our commissioners who will be leading this initial conversation. First up is Sherry Cheney-Jones, President of Measurement Resources Company and Sure Impact. She'll explore the effect of COVID-19 on women in the workforce and tell you how the Columbus Commitment addresses the wage gap head-on. Then you'll hear from Veronica Knuth, the Chief People Officer at Quantum Health. Veronica will share what it means to be an adopter and what all of you can expect moving forward. Next, it is a team effort. Denise Robinson, President and CEO of Alvis, Inc., and Heather Whaling, President and founder of Gebbon Communications, will join forces to outline how best to stay informed, as well as highlight what other adopters have done to bring their visions to life. And Gina Ginn, Chief Executive Officer with Columbus Early Learning Centers, will close us out with tips on how to include the commitment in your company's social media posts and how you can better connect with others to maximize our collective impact. We know this is a lot of information to digest all at once, so we've saved some time at the end for Q&A session. Please submit your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring as we go, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. Again, thank you for being with us today. Sherry will take it from here.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I guess. It's great to see everyone. If we could pull up the slides, that would be wonderful. But I'm here today, very excited to be with you today and explore strategies for advancing women equity and advancement here in Central Ohio. This work has been important to the mayor's office since day one in his first term, and the commission was created in 2017 from the passion of the First Lady Shannon Ginther. So thank you, Ms. Ginther, for the introduction, and with the leadership of Mayor Ginther. And we're excited to talk about why this work is still as important as it ever was with what's going on in our current community and the disparities that we're seeing. Next slide. We knew that women were already facing a pay gap before the pandemic, but the reality is some of the statistics are not going in the direction we want. They're actually going in the different directions. So let's see where we are today. Next slide, please. So currently, overall, women earn 82 cents for every dollar a man earns here locally in Central Ohio. Black women earn 63 cents for every dollar a man earns. Latinas earn 57 cents for every dollar a man earns. And Hispanic women will have to wait until 2022 if we don't do anything, and Black women until 2133 for equal pay. Let's just set that in, right? If any of you have children or your grandchildren, think about what that means for them. That even in their lifetimes, they would not experience pay equity unless we do the important work that the Women's Commission is doing. Next slide, please. Another thing we have to understand is the importance of how families are relying on women's income in our communities. Breadwinning mothers are critical to the family's economic security. 2/3 of working mothers were breadwinners before the pandemic. So we already knew that many families throughout Central Ohio are relying on female earners to take care of their families. Mothers of color are most likely to be breadwinners. Low-income families are more likely to have breadwinning mothers as well. So already facing the economic challenges that they're experiencing. Also, mothers of school-age children are more likely to be breadwinners. And 68% of Black mothers are breadwinners for their families. So the majority of the families of Black women are breadwinners for their family, meaning that the work that the pay equity efforts that your organizations are doing will lift up and make a huge difference, not just for the women that you employ, but for communities in Central Ohio as well. Next slide. Yet there's an unsettling trend that women's poverty is on the rise. So as we know, families are dependent on women breadwinning. We are also seeing more and more women entering into poverty. 20%, so 1 in 5 of women in Columbus are below the poverty level. 10% of employed women are below the poverty level. And 10.9% of women head of households who work full-time are below the poverty level. And 37.9% of women head of households with children are below the poverty level. So again, this is a significant concern in our communities, affecting children and families throughout our communities. Now let's talk about the impact of COVID on women in the workplace. Next slide, please. So we all know that we've experienced significant changes as a result of the pandemic. Let's dive deeper into the data and see what it has to say. Next slide. So a reason that it is more important than ever is that women are having a difficult time finding jobs after becoming unemployed due to related pandemic, whether it was needing to step away for taking care of their families during the pandemic or loss of jobs during the pandemic. There's not been a one-for-one replacement of jobs as the economy slowly began to reopen. As you can see here, Black and Latinx women continue to have high levels of unemployment, significantly higher than pre-recession levels. At the same time, unemployment is actually rising for Latinx women. This is again due to the high concentration of Black and Latinx women in low-wage service sector and child sector jobs. All right, next slide, please. So although the statistics are grim, the good news is we are here to move forward. We're here to reverse those statistics. So I'm excited to introduce my colleagues that they will be able to show you how to better connect, retain women in the workforce, and to change these statistics. And I believe Veronica is up.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Sherry. So we thought we would kind of ground everybody in who we are, what we do as part of your onboarding to the Women's Commission. So we are an advisory body to Mayor Ginther. We are chaired by First Lady Shannon, who kicked us off this morning. I'm on Sherry's time zone this afternoon. And our work is designed to complement and further propel the work that all of you do every day in your companies towards economic empowerment for women. We're focused on economic stability for women in our community, and we use our positionality to bring issues to the forefront of policies, build awareness through coalition work with community partners, etc. Our core is furthering the health, housing, workplace gender equity, and workforce development. And we focus on both systemic and current challenges, such as lessons learned and learnings that occurred during the pandemic. So what does it mean to be an adopter? Let's go to the next slide. So the pledge that you signed as an adopter really asks you to do 4 things. The first is to learn about gender pay gap and understand how race and other factors create even larger disparities. We want you to analyze and review your internal policies and practices, including how hiring, promotional, and pay practices may lead to gender and racial disparities within your organization. We want you to take action and invest time and talent to implement solutions, and we want to share best practices with successes in other organizations, such as what each of you are doing in your organizations and the fact that you're participating today as a community of learners. The commitment goes beyond the numbers and equal pay for equal work, which are still vitally important. But it's also about where women are in your company or your organization and ensuring that they have the opportunity to succeed. And I think it's important also to say that we do not collect your data. But what we want to do is we want to give you all of the information, all of the connections, all of the learnings so that you can be really confident in assessing, understanding, analyzing, acting, and sharing on the data that you have within your organization. So next slide. So how do you engage with the commission? We really do have a variety of offerings that I think meet the needs of our adopters, and where they don't, we find specialized opportunities to help and support. So the first thing that we encourage you to do is to attend quarterly briefings and learning events. We want you to learn about these events by subscribing to our newsletter or by following us on social media platforms. We want you to complete a biannual survey, which again doesn't collect your data, but it does help us deliver the tools and resources you need and understand what you find useful and what you need more of or less of. We want you to also utilize website resources, and we have a picture here of our back to school playbook for employers. This is a great example of where we met a more immediate need of our adopters and quite frankly our community. This was created by adopters to help all of us adopt flexible practices for working moms during COVID. Again, one more way that we can take current relevant topics, bring them to the commission and the adopters of our pledge, and really take some real-time action on a real-time problem. We also want you to utilize the learning community. I sat in the exact same position that you're in 4 years ago, where I was an adopter. I didn't really understand what I needed to do to make sure that my company could be the best that it could be. And so I really spent some time and energy going to the events, understanding what the commission had to offer, bring practices into my organization, and then ultimately giving back my time as a commissioner. So again, lots of ways to get involved, and we really encourage you to get involved in a variety of different ways. And we also have opportunities for you to invite others from your organization to get involved in as well. So Sherry mentioned that we are taking chats all along the way, questions all along the way. So if you have some, please just put them in the chat function, and we'll answer them as we get through the end of the presentation. So next slide, please. So we talked about our adopter events, our lunch and learns. Next slide. The other thing that we also do is we bring information to you from other partners in and around the community. This is an example of a resource from the Financial Empowerment Center. It's a resource for employees to give to that employers can give to their employees around counseling and for their employees specifically. Another great example is the City of Columbus has made a commitment to childcare scholarships through the RISE program. And these are just a few examples of some of the things that are involved outside the Women's Commission, but that are very linked to the work that all of us do to boost the financial and economic status of women in our workforce. So we are thrilled to be at 391 adopters of the commitment. We represent small, medium, large companies, nonprofits, higher education institutions, and government entities. We're proud of all of our adopters, and as we take strides locally to impact the equity in the workplace and each of you plays an important role, regardless of where you are on the journey. I'm going to pass it over to my fellow commissioners, Denise Robinson and Heather Whaling, now to talk more about the work that we've done and the work that we will continue to do.
Good morning or afternoon, I'm sorry. I'm Denise Robinson, and I just wanted to welcome all the new adopters here today with us. And I just want you all to know that this is an amazing journey that you will be riding on. I want to start by just giving a brief summary of the Alvis experience with the Columbus Commitment. It's easier than you may imagine to get started. In fact, those of you who are new adopters are most likely in the action phases already because your organization has already committed to being an equitable employer. At Alvis, gender and racial pay equity and ensuring at Alvis is a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. It's just part of our DNA. My executive team here at Alvis is comprised entirely of women, two of whom are persons of color. And that really wasn't my goal. It's just that it was the result of selecting the best people to do the job. Taking the formal step of signing a pledge, it has been extremely important to Alvis, and it's for these reasons. I didn't want anyone to question where Alvis stood on this, and I did not want Alvis to be left out of any important conversations. I started my career working with a man who openly discussed factors outside of qualifications and performance when considering employee pay rates, like that a man has a family to support, so he needs a higher rate of pay. So I grew up in my organization, I've been here 38 years, with that in the back of my mind, that that's how my boss felt. So it was really important for me to change that. It's important also to think about gender and racial pay equity beyond your workplace. And I say that because in my business, I have to think about the clients that are entrusted to my care, that are they going to be working for an employer that doesn't believe in pay equity? Now I just want to transition real quick and talk a few quick things. Veronica touched on these to kind of get started, engaging yourselves. Veronica already mentioned these, but if you haven't already, sign up for the newsletter and go to the commission website. These two simple steps, they will reward you with a wealth of information and resources. You know, in the newsletter and on the website, there are resources you can use to educate your staff about implicit bias. You know, such as take a look at the Harvard Implicit Bias Test. And also Gender by Us. It's a downloadable guide for having conversations that challenges implicit biases and gender norms. The website also contains numerous resources and employer toolkits to help you take action. You won't know what your next steps need to be until you know what the problem is. So you should conduct a pay equity analysis. You can start very small by using your payroll system to provide data to conduct a mini analysis of one or two job categories. That's what I did. Do not look at names, do not look at gender or race or length of service. Only look at the job titles and the pay rates to see if there are disparities. If you find disparities, then you have to start drilling down to find out why those disparities exist. Many employers already have the tools to demonstrate they have an equitable pay structure. For example, at Alvis, we've had to step it up and do more salary and benefits surveys in the last 2 years. We wanted to ensure we can attract quality employees in this much more competitive labor market. You know, this work is a journey. It's not a one-time thing. You cannot just do a few things and think that you've got it all done. It is a journey. We've been doing this for many, many years. Thank goodness, you know, in our world, we have, lots of powerful advocates setting good examples, like Serena and Venus Williams. They fought for years for pay equity in tennis. And in 2007, the 4 major tennis tournaments agreed to pay equal purses. Ever since, equal wages at the biggest events have been an article of faith. And then look at Megan Rapinoe in soccer. She has long been one of the biggest voices and advocates for equal pay in the U.S. Soccer Federation, and equal pay was agreed upon via collective bargaining agreements in May of 2022. So just now, this year, the soccer started paying equal pay. And that is so amazing for me to even think about that. We should all be doing this. We have to be able to do this and to help our employees to ensure that we are doing what's best for everyone. So we all have to fight, just like Serena and Venus and Megan did. We all have to fight for the biggest wins. We always want the biggest wins. So now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Heather Whaling.
Thank you, Denise. So I will share a little bit about the value that we have gotten and why we have signed on to the pledge. And then I have some questions that I'll ask our fellow commissioners so they can also share their experience with all of you. But first, welcome to being part of the Columbus Commitment and the Pledge. We're so glad to have you here. I think the more companies and organizations that are working towards creating more equitable workplaces will allow us to help move Columbus forward as being a more equitable community overall. I'm the CEO of Gebbin Communication. I have 35 people who work for me. So we're a small business, but part of what I am trying to do is have a true focus on rewriting the rules around how business gets done and showing that you can run a profitable, growing company and still invest in employees' well-being and have policies that are fair and equitable across the board. I believe as an employer that we have a responsibility to innovate workplace policies to make sure that they really meet the needs of today's workforce. Many of the policies that we're still following were created decades ago, and work has drastically changed and family dynamics have drastically changed, and the whole world has really changed since then. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we are updating our policies to keep up with the changing needs of our workforce. In signing the pledge, it's really helped us gain access to best practices. I think part of what I have gotten the most value out of is being able to tap into other leaders in the community who are navigating very similar issues that we are. And especially as a small business, to be able to see what some of the larger employers are doing or the resources that they have access to and are willing to share with us, but then also to be able to connect with some of my fellow small business owners who can move quickly and are able to change policies maybe a little faster than at other places so that we can continue to learn from each other and encourage each other. There's also a wealth of data and tools, as Denise had mentioned, that are available because you've signed the pledge. So I hope you'll be able to take advantage of access to those as well. And the last piece really is, I think all of us are focused on how can we help make sure that we're attracting, retaining top talent in this very competitive talent market. And being part of this commitment, I think, sends a real strong signal to potential employees and will help you continue to achieve your talent goals, whatever those look like within your organization. So we have a number of other commissioners on the line with us today who I do want to bring into the conversation so we can hear their experiences and how they have been able to take advantage of being part of this commitment and how it's helped them keep pay equity top of mind. So I will start with Bob. Bob, if you want to come off mute and share a little bit about how being part of the Columbus Commitment has helped you keep pay equity at the forefront and some steps that you've taken since signing the pledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Heather, for that. And thank you to the new adopters. We really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing to help forward pay equity in our community. So thank you for joining this. We started, when we joined the commitment, we were relatively small. I think we had maybe about 40 or 50 employees at that time. And a lot of our positions were, kind of equitable in terms of pay because they were based off of the role. What we found, when we first started on is we took a look at what was happening to our staff, and making sure that they had the support that they needed that was right for them. So one of the first things that we did when we started looking at this was introducing a short-term disability policy to cover paid leave. So we saw that this disproportionately affecting women were situations that they needed to take time, extended time off of work. And we didn't have any benefits that supported that. So we wanted to find a way that we could do that. And that's where the short-term disability policy came into place. And that's been really helpful, to make it culturally appropriate to make sure that women take the time that they need for the situations that come up. But beyond that, we've started to look at, as we've grown, we've seen more opportunity to look closer at how we pay and making sure that it's equitable across the board. So there have been decision points that have come up as our business has grown, where managers, for example, that we didn't have, maybe we just had one, we now have two or three, and we want to make sure that that's equitable. So we've been looking at that when we have a new a promotion or a new hire or something like that, where we can take an opportunity to make sure that we are being equitable in the pay across the board. And I think having this, signing the commitment, making sure that we're keeping that top of mind has really been helpful and supportive in doing that. It really holds us accountable, which I think is really important, because at the end of the day, when those of us that have this decision-making power, you kind of need something to help hold yourselves accountable. So that's been really helpful. As Denise mentioned, looking at your data, I think is really, really helpful and insightful. If you can just take a step back and kind of look at a recent payroll and see, who's getting paid what, and then give that a little bit of a second look and make sure that that is equitable. Sometimes these are tough conversations to have, but I think that at the end, doing this really shows your staff that you care, and really helps forward making sure that that your staff is equitably compensated and taken care of.
That's great, Bob. Thanks for sharing that. Sherry, I'd love to hear from you. If you could tell us a little bit about how being part of the commitment has helped from a leadership standpoint, and as you've thought about your own workplace policies and pay equity internally.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Heather. I think pay equity has always been something that's been important to me, but as a very growing company and entrepreneur, it gave us the opportunity to stop and think about, wow, we've gone from 3 or 4 employees to over 10 in a really short time, and have we been very meaningful about the pay equity, and is there any pay equity gap? So I think the very first thing we did was did an audit, as Denise mentioned, and really looked at different job titles and what those jobs were asked to do in our company, and where the pay equal across the bands. And now moving forward, as we continue to grow and we continue to hire, we're implementing some of the best practices that we've learned from the commission, from one, just being aware of it, but two, also making sure that we are thoughtful about, for different job classes, what is the pay range, and are we publishing that? Are we letting people know what the pay ranges are? So just being more intentional about our work to match what we already valued, and making sure that we're putting it into practice are some of the things that we did immediately as part of this work. And it really is just a conversation we're able to take to our leadership team while we're hiring, while we're growing. So I'm grateful that we're part of this. I'm grateful that we're learning more. As a female entrepreneur, I've always valued paid leave and other great policies. But it's nice to just continue to be on the forefront and be with other leaders that are part of the commission, because we learn from each other, and we're able to grow and lift up the women in our community more thoughtfully.
Absolutely. And then last but not least, I want to turn it over to Gina to share a little bit more about her experience. Gina is a longtime commissioner and chairs the Gender Equity in the Workplace Committee, or co-chairs that committee. So Gina, talk to us a little bit about your experience and what it's meant for your organization to be part of this program.
Heather, so I think for us as a small nonprofit in Columbus, signing the pay equity pledge was something that was really easy for us to do, but also gave us some time for reflection, kind of like what Sherry had mentioned, and Denise and Bob, that for me, when we signed the pay equity pledge, it was more about how do we as a nonprofit childcare organization compare to others in our community and how we pay. So it brought up a really good conversation, I think, in the community, as well as then internally with us, about how underpaid most of childcare staff are in our community, and that they are not making a living wage. So most of our commitment about pay equity is really about how do we pay for the work that they're doing in an equitable way to what others are doing, what other teachers are doing, what others do in the care sector, and how do we ensure that we can help to raise wages so that our workforce, which is 98% women, have the ability to make a living wage and to support their families in our community. So I think that for us, it's really been about how do we also spark a community conversation around pay equity in general for the workforce of childcare in our community, and I think that that's really been where we've focused a lot of our work. Is almost on an external facing platform, but then also doing very similar things to what all of the other commissioners have talked about in regards to just looking at what the job is, and are all of the people that do that same exact job making that same pay or in that same pay range. So I think that for us it's been an internal and external exercise once we sign the pledge.
That's great, Gina. Thanks for sharing. I think, Gina, I think you actually are the one who's going to bring us home with the wrap up too. So we'll keep you front and center.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate it. Christina, can we pull the slides back up again, please? So as we kind of come to the close and move forward to some Q&A for all of our attendees, I do want to make sure that you all know how to keep in touch and how to best utilize the resources that we do have available to new adopters. So first, making sure that all of you are a part of our email community and our newsletter community. So as you can see here, if you go to columbus.gov/pay equity, you can sign up for our emails and to make sure that you're receiving our emails. And then we would also, for those of you that are on the call, if there's other folks within your organization that should be a part of this conversation or should be a part of what we do and the work that we do, make sure to encourage them to also sign up for the newsletter. And please also share that information with us on others within your organization that we should know or be in contact with. Next slide. Also, as you can see from the Columbus Women's Commission website, there are a lot of resources that we continually update on the website. So please feel free to check in every once in a while to see what's new and download anything that is that may be of help to you. Next slide. Also, for those of you who are new to this program and to the Columbus commitment, please feel free to share this with others within your network. We, of course, are always taking new adopters into our network and into this program. And we would love that if you are in a specific industry and there might be a specific industry-wide group that you're a part of, we would always be available to come out and talk with that group about what it means to be a part of the Columbus commitment, and also to help you do a signing event to get additional folks signed up for the Columbus commitment. Next slide. So again, this is just the commitment to the pay equity pledge. You can go on to the website as well and see what current adopters are there. If you know anyone, please feel free to connect with them if they're not here today. We would love to make sure that they are also getting all of the information for new adopters. And if you bring any other new adopters in, this just gives them additional resources. Also, for those of you who are new to the pay equity pledge, we do want to just for you to take note that our mayor has made a commitment throughout all departments within the city and within his work within our community about empowering, our community on how we can grow and prosper in a way that is equitable. And so the Opportunity Rising is kind of the termed phrase within the city about how we go about this work and how all of the departments within the city are working to increase equity in all areas, including policies and the reform of policies. And you can see much of this specific work right now today in our housing sector and with eviction work. That was a lot of it was sparked by the work that the Women's Commission has done. So these things are always aligned to what the city's goals and focus are. And we just want everyone to know that there are additional resources and the ability to have, impact in other ways in our community with the work that's happening around equity. Next slide. The framework for Opportunity Rising, of course, is around economic stability, health and well-being, and safe and resilient communities. And so our work is always plugging into each of these individual areas and ensuring that we have resources available to our residents to ensure that they can live in a city that honors who they are and their families. So also for those of you who do sign, or if you have other companies you want to recommend to us, we always try to ensure that we are marketing you and letting people know in the community the work that you're doing for pay equity. So here are some examples on other companies and some of the social media outlets that we've been able to participate in. And some of the social media outlets we've been able to engage to help them with the marketing of the supports that they're doing to support their workforce. Also, this is just an update. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the presentation about equal pay days, and we have several that are coming up. So Mom's Equal Pay Day is this coming September 8th. Black Women's Equal Pay Day is September 21st. Native Women's Equal Pay Day is November 30th. And Latina Women's Equal Pay Day is December 8th. So for those of you new to this work, what these equal pay days mean is that based on a man's income from last year, so in 2021, his income, that women and then Black women and then Native women and then Latina women need to work all of last year plus all of this year up until September 8th, September 21st, November 30th, December 8th to make what he made last year. So I think that's really important, another really important message to help folks put perspective on equal pay and what it means and what it is we're truly working towards as a community. Also, as a reminder, we have coming up in the fourth quarter of this year, for all of the adopters, new and those who have been a part of this journey for the last 4 years, we'll be doing a post-Dobbs implications for employers and employer plan sponsors. And that will be coming up and made available to all of you for you to attend. And then finally, we'll bring in the rest of the commissioners who have been here today, as well as Christina from the mayor's office, for any questions that our audience might have for us. And again, thank you all for joining today, as well as thank you so much for making this commitment to your employees and to our city. We know that together we can achieve pay equity together.
Thanks, Gina. I just saw one question that came in that maybe you can start to answer. I'll also bring in some of the other commissioners. But we have an attendee that was curious how they can get started. They've signed the pledge and they want to know what their first steps are.
So I think all of us started similarly. I think Denise and Bob and Heather, we all really started by just taking a look at our last payroll and looking at the individual positions and the job duties within a position and making sure that all of the people who have that same exact job title, not by who they are or whether or not they have a spouse or a partner, but just are all of the people with the same position making the same rate of pay? And if there is a discrepancy, how do you start to work to equalize everyone who does the same job being paid the same?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, Gina. And I would just add kind of, echo what I said a little bit earlier about just looking at your staff in general. Again, for everybody is a little bit different. Every organization is a little bit different, right? So there isn't really a specific one size fits all approach to doing this when you're getting started. So just digging in, looking at what your staff, what their needs are, especially with the women that work there, and understanding whether or not you're supporting their needs, and looking at that and making sure that you can start to make efforts to do that. But like Gina said, if you do have various roles and the pay equity is varies to a wide degree, then looking at that and trying to see if is there any movement you can make to bridge that a bit.
We're going to go with a slide here with my contact information. This is Christina Ratliff. You can feel free to email me as well, and I'm happy to connect you with a similarly sized organization that could maybe be a peer mentor that would be happy to share some of their experiences and early learnings with you as well. I want to thank everyone. We're going to have a closing with Mrs. Ginther, but I want to thank everyone for your time today. You'll be receiving more information from us, but in the meantime, feel free to reach out with any questions you have.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend this webinar. We'll follow up shortly with an email containing a copy of today's recording as well as a brief summary. And be sure to stay tuned for additional details on our next quarterly briefing. We look forward to seeing you again soon.